everyone, it's Kate Barford here in Melbourne, Australia, Art2Ride affiliated trainer, and my training business is Flowing Equines for anyone who is looking for an Art2Ride trainer in Melbourne. This video is meant to serve as an update of the state of training of my horse Danny Boy. It's also an opportunity for me to share with you an entire session from start to finish rather than shorter clips. However, in this first session, I did actually do a few minutes of work in hand first, but I didn't record it. But I will show you work in hand from another session and another short ride at the end of this video. In this first session, I hope you will see a very relaxed horse who is stretching consistently. And in the second ride, I hope you will see the very beginnings of a horse who is ready to start coming into working gaits. So this is my horse Danny Boy. He is a purebred Egyptian Arabian. He was a stallion until he was 7, and he was not started under saddle until he was 11. At least that's the story I was given when he was given to me. Someone tried to use him as a trail horse to no avail, and then gave him over to a horse rescue where he was trained with the basics of natural horsemanship. That's when I met him as a relatively green 16-year-old. He was used as a lesson horse at the time. I began riding him twice a week until we realized he was just too unsound to be ridden. He had an ill-fitting saddle, his feet were poorly trimmed, and the ground where he was used for lessons was very hard, causing lots of concussion up and down his joints, which caused permanent splints under both his knees. An x-ray from the vet showed that he had a lot of cartilage wear down in his right coffin joint, and he was very lame on this leg, as well as moderately to mildly lame on all the other legs. This was a result of him working incorrectly, pulling himself along with his front end rather than pushing from behind, and most importantly, without engaging his core, which should be the horse's shock absorption system. He was given to me when he was 17, and I began looking for a better way. In this video, he is about to turn 20, and I have been working him according to Art2Ride for 1 year and 9 months. So why do I train in this method? Well, because my horse needs to work with proper biomechanics, where his core is engaged to absorb shock, where his back is supple, and where the weight is evenly distributed over his legs, including pushing with the hind legs to avoid so much concussion down the front legs. The fact that this horse is sound is all the confirmation that I need that I'm doing the right thing by him. Not only that, but this method has given this horse more peace of mind and relaxation than any other method I tried which proposes to work with the horse's thoughts. If you take away the pain and you show the horse a comfortable way to work, and you work within the limits of what the horse is physically capable of, and never ask them to engage in movements that they have not been properly developed to engage in, then you will have a horse that trusts you, and you will not have to use force or coercion to work with them. Here, Danny is working in the stretch. I came across this quote from Harvard Health that I think applies well to horses. Stretching keeps the muscles flexible, strong, and healthy, and we need that flexibility to maintain a range of motion in the joints. Without it, the muscles shorten and become tight. Then, when you call on the muscles for activity, they are weak and unable to extend all the way. That puts you at risk for joint pain, strains, and muscle damage. This is exactly why we stretch the horses. The horse must first fully relax the muscles if we want them to fully engage the muscles. In addition, in this posture, the horse is straight through the body, evenly distributing the weight on the front 2 legs. If the horse is favoring one side, he will not come into the stretch. So if you are rehabilitating a horse, you must first teach the horse to relax the muscles that he has been using to compensate before you can ask him to engage the correct muscles that will keep him sound. In addition, what is most important is the activity of the hind end. When the horse steps deep under the body with the hind legs, he will naturally want to stretch forward and downwards. Bringing the hind legs under the body rotates the pelvis, engages the core, lifts the back, and opens the vertebra. If the horse's back is hollow and its pelvis is rotated the wrong way, the hind legs can't come underneath them, and they can't take weight on the hind, so they overload the front and cause problems on the legs. Hollowing the back reduces space between the vertebrae. This reduces the horse's flexibility. The vertebrae can also rub together, causing irritation, inflammation, pain, and fusion or kissing spine. So it is important to teach the horse to come through with the hind legs and take weight. This starts with the stretch, and then over time you can ask him to bring the head up, and he will lighten in the front to the degree that he is able to lower behind. If you ask him to bring the pole up before he has to stretch to lower behind, he will hollow his back, and you will never get correct working gaits, let alone collection. So the purpose of this method is to use gymnastic exercises to systematically develop the horses physically over time so that they can carry a rider and stay sound and have longevity. This is how the old masters used to do it, and how everyone who used to need their horses to last used to do it. Too much of what we see today is competitions to see who can fake collected postures the best through force with horses who aren't physically capable of carrying themselves in collection because no one has ever taken the time to develop them properly. And of course they end up lame or mentally unsound and are traded in for the new model. And the process starts again. So slow and steady wins the race. Put in the couple of years it takes to develop your horse properly, and you will have a sound horse for life. If you're starting with a young horse who you are not rehabilitating, you will find that they naturally take to the stretch and that they will take to this method with very little resistance. And it should take about 2 years to develop a solid top line on any horse. Okay, back to the video. This was an amazing day for me. I've gotten to the point in my training now where I don't really stress when I have a bad day. If we aren't putting our best foot forward, mentally and physically, how can we expect our horse to put their best foot forward? If I have a bad training day or week or month, I focus on finding peace in my life, finding ways to come back to the present moment, to allow my mind to be quiet again. I also focus on getting my body right, for example through stretching or massage. Only then can we see what the horse really has to offer. When you go to the paddock with a clear mind and feeling good in your body, you can open yourself up to your horse. It is important to allow yourself to be vulnerable. That is, to allow yourself the opportunity to make mistakes and to allow your horse the opportunity to make mistakes. If we cannot be vulnerable, if we aim for perfection, then we will micromanage the horse and we will try to control him. Even in the subtlest ways, we will introduce tension, force, and control if our expectations are too high. Learning to manage your expectations is one of the hardest parts of training a horse. Great trainers can see small improvements and reward them, and these changes cascade into larger changes. If you set your expectations low, your horse will amaze you when he exceeds them. Also, think about what your expectations are of yourself. Do you expect perfection from yourself each time you train? You shouldn't. You should expect of yourself only that you keep a clear mind. And don't judge yourself if doubt does creep in. Just breathe through it. Expect of your horse only relaxation. Everything else will come much easier. You might have heard the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. This means you can't force the horse, but it also has a more specific meaning to me. To drink water, a horse has to make himself vulnerable to predators. He has to be relaxed to drink water. You can't make a horse drink because you can't force relaxation. Trust that your horse knows what you are asking. Stop constantly asking and just wait for him to relax. Then he will respond. Sometimes horses are simply too stressed to think through the question that we're asking. The day before this session, I went into the paddock with a clear mind. I focused only on rewarding relaxation and managing my own anxieties. All of a sudden, I saw what my horse was offering to me. He was making suggestions. He was offering me the trot. He was requesting a path to go on the outside rather than the inside of the logs in the barrel that you see in this video. He needed a larger circle. He didn't pull on the line, he just made a suggestion and I was listening. The work he offered when I gave him that path was so beautiful that I only did one circle of trot on the lunge and then quit for the day. I'm actually getting emotional just remembering it. This video is of the next session I had with him after I quit the previous session after only one circle of trot. And my intention on this day was to treat the time with my horse as a meditation. In the lunge work, I focus only on getting his eye out in front of me, just like you focus on getting the horse in front of the leg under saddle so that you know their energy is flowing forward, and then drawing his shoulder to the inside a bit with my body language. When the horse carries the shoulder to the outside, they avoid taking weight on the inside hind, so this is important. The lateral work allows us to develop the horse behind one leg at a time, and eventually they will take weight on both in collection. When the horse is relaxed and has longitudinal flexion in the stretch, which opens up space in the vertebra, the lateral work is easy. If they are stiff and their vertebrae are locked because their back is hollow, they will not be able to bend properly. It is important that when you train a horse, you work on forward first. It's the activity that develops the horse. If the horse is not moving, they will not develop no matter how good you can get their posture at the halt or in a step-by-step walk. Also, if you focus on getting your horse forward, you will have no problem getting the horse to stop at the end of the session. I never have to ask Danny to stop or pull on the reins. I just stop asking him to go forward. There are a few things that I love about this session. First, it was very short. In my last yearly update video, I was so anxious and tense about being filmed that I worked my horse for over an hour and didn't really get anywhere. The ground was also very hard at that time and he was struggling. So I said in that video that my goal was to get him into the stretch sooner during my ride. You'll see that in this video he stretches almost straight away, and the ride altogether was only 15 minutes long, and we achieved much more. This is largely a product of me getting better at managing my own relaxation, which allows my horse to find relaxation sooner. Second, I love seeing how much movement Danny is getting through the hock in this. He barely used to bend these joints at all. When he comes into the trot, you'll see that he's starting to look round in the work. Round is in the back, when the horse lifts and rounds its back and comes through with the hind legs. It's not in the nose. Having the horse tucked up in the nose does not make it round. In fact, it usually blocks the forward flow of movement for the horse, and the horse goes much better when allowed to poke his nose out slightly in front of the vertical. So I hope you'll enjoy watching this work as much as I enjoyed working with my horse on this day. So I'll provide some commentary on the video. Here I'm just asking him to come out in front of me. As I was saying, that's the first thing I like to establish on the lunge line. Also when riding, getting the horse out in front of me. So I'm just waiting for him to come forward so that his eye is in front of me. You can see that I'm out in front of him at the moment. And he tends to start out a little slow, going each direction. I don't really expect perfection in the walk until after the trot with this horse. Usually he needs that little bit of extra forward energy to get him going. So it just needs to be good enough. I want him to be over his back as much as possible before I ask for the trot. So I'm doing quite a bit of work. I'm driving him from point to point on the circle. There, he started to come out in front of me, and you can see how his neck got longer there. For just a moment. Again, he's starting to come out in front of me here, so hopefully we'll see a better quality walk. He is striding out quite nicely, but I know that with a little bit more relaxation, he can be more over his back than this and more engaged. And he is tossing his head quite a bit throughout this whole video. There's so many flies in this paddock at the moment. That's looking a bit better there. We're starting to see a little bit more relaxation, a bit of a lick and chew, and coming down into the stretch a bit more. So usually I would take that. That's good enough for me in the walk before the trot. Let's see here. I should probably send him into the trot soon. Yeah, there he goes. So as you can see with the trot, he goes straight into it, which is an amazing development for him to just lock into the trot like that. I never worked on walk to trot transitions, I just worked on getting each of the gaits good. And when you have a good walk and a good trot, then your transitions are also good. So you can see here he's getting nice hawk movement. He does have a little bit of a restriction behind. I didn't say this before, but in February of this year, we moved to this adjustment, and he actually had an accident where the new herd drove him through a fence. So he was very lucky to be alive. He tried to jump the fence and did a fairly good job of it, but he pulled some muscles behind and scraped up his back legs pretty deep. So we started over, and I did more rehabilitation work with him, becoming somewhat of an expert at that now. And yeah, he's come back better than ever, so it can really be beneficial to start back at the beginning. So I was really happy with that trot. He went straight into it. He gave me a few beautiful, very consistent laps around, and now he's come here. As you can see, the quality of the walk is so much better after the trot. It's just so much more consistent and locked in. None of the head tossing nonsense and trying to find that relaxation. He just goes straight into it. So he's an older horse. He's just turned 20 this month, and so sometimes he just needs to get that fluid going in his joints to really find it. And this is just a beautiful walk here, so I was really happy with that. All right, that's the end of the lunging session. So that was the full lunging session, just under 20 minutes altogether. And now we have the ride, which I think is about 15. So as you can see, he comes out and does a nice stretch straight away. In my previous ride, it took me quite a long time last year in my video to get a stretch out of my horse. There you can see he's stretching really nice and deep straight away. So this is from the very beginning of the ride. I just had to ride into the frame because I mounted him outside of the frame. I do try to stay in the frame as much as possible in this video, but I get a little bit far away at times. I've tried to crop it so that you can see as much of the ride as possible. So he's a little inconsistent at first. Again, just like with the lunging work, he's a little bit inconsistent in the walk before we go into the trot, but still I'm really happy with where he's starting out here. So I usually try to warm him up in the walk in both directions, and then do a little bit of trot work, and if the work is good, then come back, finish with a little bit of lateral work in the walk, and that's it. So one thing I'm always talking about on the discussion boards on the Art2Ride fans and followers page, some of you have questions about rehabilitating horses. One of the most important things to do is quit when the horse gets it right, especially in the very beginning with work in hand and things like that. If the horse gives you a little bit of a stretch, make sure that you heavily reward that. You can use treats, or you can just quit for the day, or you can change directions so that the horse knows that they got the answer to the question you were asking on that side. And then you'll find when you come back to it that the horse gets there quicker, and then you can move on to the next step. So I'm really happy with this. He's stretching quite consistently. I'm riding around in a big open paddock, which is just amazing. I would not have been able to do that with this horse when I first got him, due to both of our anxieties, I think. So I'm really proud of how far we've come on that front. I actually took him for his first trail ride a couple weeks ago, and he was just absolutely amazing. He was stretching and striding out on the trail, and I was expecting him to just be snorting and anxious the whole time, and he really wasn't. There was a bit of an issue with some kangaroos that jumped out at us, which caused a little bit of drama, but in a country without kangaroos, he would be the perfect trail horse. And hopefully we'll get him past that too, and I can continue to enjoy him out on the trail, because there's nothing better than riding a horse that's over his back and striding out like that. Riding that wave, as Will says. So we get a bit far away from the camera here, but we'll come back around in just a moment. So yeah, it's been a good year for us. We've gotten much more consistent, been able to get out and about a bit more, go out on the trail even, ride out in this big open paddock. And yeah, we were able to rehabilitate him from his injury going through the fence, and he's settled in with the herd beautifully now. He's on 10 acres with 10 other horses. And absolutely loves it. So again, what I'm looking for here is just for the walk to be good enough in both directions. And then I'll bring him into the trot. And we're also starting to do arena work now. So the arena surface where I am is a little bit deep, but he's adjusting to it. And here in summer, the ground is starting to get very hard. There's drought all across Australia at the moment. You can see the grass is green at this time. This was a couple months ago, but now the ground is starting to get quite hard, so better for this horse that has previous concussion issues to work on ground that's a little too soft and a little too hard. So we're starting to do that, and he's starting to go well there, and hopefully I can get some video of some arena work for you all soon. And my other goal over the summer is to work on my position. So when I'm a bit closer to the camera, you'll be able to see my position a bit more, but essentially what I'm doing is just trying to have an even contact with the horse on both reins, but also both legs. So having that nice consistent contact all the way down my thigh and calf as well, and keeping my toes lifted. I've had some problems with my right hip, so you might notice in this video that my right leg doesn't look fantastic, but now that this horse is starting to go quite well, I really need to work on my position in order for us to go further together. It's a nice deep stretch there, so looks like I'll probably send him into a bit of a trot soon. Yes, but as far as riding goes, essentially it's the act of staying out of the way of your horse, not blocking your horse in any way. There's so many ways that we can subtly block the horse. So I like to say that it's simply the act of staying out of the horse's way mentally and physically. So we have to master our own mind and body if we ever wish to master the horse. So I just focus on keeping my inner thighs rolled back so his shoulder is free, and keeping my shoulder blades back so that I stay off his forehand and allow him forward. The more freedom that you give the horse, the more that they will show you what they can do. That's looking really nice there. Exactly what I'm looking for. And nice of him to do it right in front of the camera as well. I think I'm just changing directions here. So you can tell when he gets into that deep stretch that he's just got that little bit of extra fluidity in his movement. And it's just such a pleasure to ride. So here we go, the trot. There was a little bit of head tossing, but really he went straight into it. And this is just so much more consistent than he used to be. He just really locks into it and gets in the zone, which is just quite a pleasure to ride. You can see that when he's locked in, so am I. I try to bring my hands together. I try to think about my, proper position. But when he tosses his head, I might have to quickly throw my hands to catch him, because we need to keep the contact consistent. If the contact goes loose when the horse throws their head up, then they will think that, oh, they get released when they throw their head, which is not what we want. We want them to know that when they're in this deepest stretch, that's where the contact is the lightest. It just feels just like holding hands with the horse's mouth. It's very gentle. Whereas when they throw their head up, the contact is still there. It's not quite as soft, but it's maintained. And there's no escaping the contact by throwing the head up. And that's really one of the hardest skills to learn in this work, is just to be able to keep the contact consistent. You can see we get this beautiful walk here. After the trot, it's always lovely to ride. And we'll trot the other way. Again, he goes straight into it, bit of head tossing. But I trust that that will all resolve over time. And it's certainly been worse since the flies have been out. You'll see in the next short video that he's got a fly mask on when I'm working him. It's just gotten to the point where we can't go without it. beautiful there. You can see his neck muscles have developed really nicely when he comes around the side of the camera. So it was about 1 year and 8 months or so that it took to get to this point. This was one of the first videos that I had of him where he was this consistent. You know, there are always good days and bad days, but there have been more and more good days recently. And we just happened to catch one on video this day. So one thing I'll just mention, riding tip, really important to stay over the middle of the horse. So sometimes it can be quite easy when you're on a circle like that to fall to the inside, so I often think about stretching into my outside leg to keep me centered over the horse, and also have my hips following the direction that the horse is going. And my reins are often aligned with the angle of my hips, so when we open the inside rein, it should be in line with the hips as well. And of course you can have that outside leg from the hip back just a little bit, which will put the weight on the inside seat bone. But if you do that, make sure that you bring your outside shoulder around forward a little bit, otherwise the horse might just leak out that outside shoulder and start going sideways, as I have experienced. So it's all really about balance. Goal that we're all always working towards. And we just end this ride with this beautiful walk here and a little bit of lateral work. And at this point, Danny really just sort of flows underneath me. It's quite easy to do lateral work once he has the longitudinal flexion happening. So once he's opened up his vertebra and he's nice and relaxed and he's got his fluids going, asking for a little bit of a leg yield is quite easy. Whereas if I try to do it at the beginning, sometimes it can be a useful tool to help get him over his back to do lateral work, but the quality isn't great usually until he's gotten to the point where he's really working over his back. Can't ask for much better of a stretchy walk than this. And that engaging that inside hind through the lateral work just gets him that little bit more engaged, so that we start to develop those top line muscles in the way that we really want to see. There's a bit of a leg yield here that you can see nicely. I'm not out of frame for that one. And all I'm doing there is opening my inside rein, keeping contact on my outside rein. It's mostly controlled by the outside rein really, and just putting on a little bit of inside leg. So if you're struggling with the lateral work, your horse probably needs more longitudinal flexion. In other words, work on the stretch and the lateral work will come for you. Okay, so that was the end of that ride. I was super happy with that day. He was becoming really consistent in that deep relaxation. But on this day, which was a few weeks later, I started to play with a few new things. So wanting to start working towards the working gaits. So here in the work in hand, I wasn't really worrying about whether or not he was in the stretch. I was just trying to maintain the contact wherever he wanted to keep his head and make sure that the rhythm of the walk didn't change, that he stayed engaged no matter what head position he was at. So that's how I've decided to start working him towards the working gaits. And if he's locked really nicely into a stretch, then I'll try to just ask him to lift just an inch or two up off the ground. So like there, that's looking quite nice. You can see he's getting really nice hop movement. And of course, when he gets it right, I reward him by letting him go all the way down deep into the stretch. So it may not look like much, but it's a gradual process. Like everything we do with Art2Ride, the thing that I love about this method is that we use what's essentially successive approximation, meaning that we show the horse the first step in a sequence, and we reward them as their behavior becomes more similar to what it is that we want. So for example, with the work in hand, we're teaching them how to be ridden from the ground, and so that when the rider gets on, it's really only adding one thing. It's not adding so many additional things all the time, or completely changing what it is we're asking. We're just slowly adding in one thing at a time. That's what I love about the way that Will starts horses as well. You know, teaching them to lunge properly and teaching them to lunge with side reins, and then when the rider gets on, you know, starting the horse to still be on the lunge line. The horse has so much consistency, and really only one thing is being changed at a time, and the horse is getting rewarded each time they get closer and closer to the ultimate goal, which is to be able to ride our horses. So if you're using a method where it doesn't seem like the ultimate goal is to ride, you might like this a bit better. So I was super happy with that. He always gets a bit of licorice when he does things right, so he would have gotten a treat, and then switch sides here. And luckily I had my partner to film me on this day, so you can see the footage a bit closer up this time. So through working in the balanced posture and the stretched, he's developed his top line, and the overworked muscles that he was using to compensate have relaxed. So now I want to see that he can maintain that relaxation and length through the muscles when more energy is added and when asked to engage more. So you can see we've got a really energetic walk going here. I am power walking, and I'm wanting to see whether he can keep that relaxation going when I am very active and very energetic. So I want to see this horse really start to come to life now, and bring out a bit of that pizzazz that he has inside him, now that I feel like I can trust him to seek that relaxation out. So with this new strength, I can now ask him to start to come up at the pole, just slightly, for short periods at first. And you'll see in the ride that I also I'm starting to do some sitting trot to try to develop his back muscles even further. I was really happy with this work in hand. I only did a couple minutes on each side, and then I lunged him. I'm not going to show the lunge work. I think I've shown more than enough lunge work already in this video. But yeah, my routine is about 3 or 4 minutes of work in hand on each side, and then try to keep it under 10 minutes lunging on each side, and then about a 20-minute ride. So it turns out to be 45 or 50 minutes altogether that I'm working for. That's a nice deep stretch there, so just rewarding him for the good work he's done. And onto the ride. So this ride is only 11 minutes long. It was the whole ride for the day. I was really happy with it, and I wanted to share the first ride because that shows the consistency of relaxation and the stretch that we've gotten, and this ride is more me experimenting with a few new things. So trying a bit of sitting trot, trying a bit of the working gaits. Again here I'm thinking about, doesn't matter where his head position is, I'm not worried about whether he's stretching or not, but I want to continue for him to reach through with those hind legs and maintain the same rhythm no matter where his head is at. That's how we know that the quality of the working gait is good. So still I'd like to start with getting him into a stretch under saddle. And there he goes. Beautiful stretch straight away. Again, I'm working on getting my legs to stretch down a bit more and have a more even contact with my horse. So one thing that I've worked on, if you are having a hard time getting that first stretch under saddle, one thing that I have found that helps is to change direction when you get something close. So if the horse gives you something in a positive direction towards the stretch, then reward that by go ahead and change direction to the other side, and do that a few times, and they tend to start to get the idea. So again, any way that you can reward something that's approximating the behavior that you want, then you are training your horse. So he's just a little bit slow here. That's looking a bit nicer. So he's opening up and engaging a bit more. I like that walk right there. So he's not all the way down in his full stretch, but his pole's raised a couple inches off the ground, but he's still coming through nicely behind. Change directions. You can see his neck muscles are developing quite nicely, and his hind end as well. So I'd say that walk is starting to look good enough. We've got a better walk, of course, after the trot once again. And I'm just doing my best to keep that contact really consistent. And of course, stay out of his way with my body. Stay straight over the center of him. And of course, he's not super consistent in the higher head positions yet. I wouldn't expect him to be. So he didn't spend quite as much time warming up the walk as in the previous video, so he doesn't go straight into the stretch and the trot right away, but now you can see here he's getting better. there we go, into the stretch. The flies were particularly bad on this day. So same thing in the trot, I'm looking for whatever head position he's in for him to continue to reach forward with those hind legs, and that's starting to look nice right there. That's about his working trot there. He can't come up much higher with the pole than that. So when he does throw his head up, that's not what I'm looking for. I want him to stretch down and then see if I can raise the pole just a little bit. So that change of the direction in the trot I was super happy with, and this trot here I'm really happy with. It's new for him to be able to change directions like that and stay engaged. Trying a bit of the sitting trot there, and he looks great. He actually responds to the sitting trot really well. He lifts his back up under me, and I can say that it's actually quite comfortable when the horse lifts up from underneath you. So what's important with the sitting trot is that the horse continues to come through with the hind legs, maintains the rhythm, and the back stays lifted and doesn't drop out from underneath you. And when the horse's back is supple, it's quite comfortable. And it's a great test of whether the horse is working properly or not, and how much their back has developed, to see how many strides they can hold you up for before you need to rise again. So he's getting more locked into the trot here. Still a little bit of head tossing, but not as bad as at the beginning. I wanted to share this clip because I think there are some really nice moments here where he gets really nice hop movement with just that little bit of a more working position. Of course, we're still experimenting with all of this. This is new to me as well. So I'm hoping to get some feedback from the other trainers about how we're going with this. And it's also can be used for us to compare to with our submission next year with how we're going in the working gates. So that's more than enough. I was asking him to maintain a higher headset than usual and engage a little bit more than usual, so I wanted to keep the session fairly short and end as always with a nice stretchy walk and a little bit of lateral work here. And of course you can use the lateral work as well to help with the working gaits, as I was just trying to do there. As they get a little bit more engaged, that's how you ask the head to come up. So that little bit of extra engagement behind should lift the pole just a little bit. So thank you for letting me share this with you. I really enjoyed both of these rides. I'm really happy with how consistently relaxed my horse is becoming, and really looking forward to playing with lifting him into the working gaits, playing with a little more sitting trot, working him in the arena as I am doing, and working on my own position, and hopefully we'll see even more progress next year. And I really love working with this method. It's become what I am most passionate about, particularly with rehabilitating horses like Danny as well. So he's 20 this year and he just keeps getting better. So hopefully I will be riding him for many years to come. I just end with a nice stretchy walk. It's a pleasure to ride. Thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Kate Barford in Melbourne, Australia.